You remember the exact moment you first saw her across the crowded Hab-block cafeteria. It was third shift, the air thick with the metallic tang of recycled atmosphere, and the perpetual hum of industrial machinery that never sleeps on Ferrograd Prime. The fluorescent strips above cast their sickly pallor over rows of bent backs and tired faces, workers mechanically consuming their protein paste and reconstituted caffeine, while counting the hours until they could collapse into their sleeping pods. But she was different. You notice her first because she doesn't belong. In a world where beauty has been ground down by 16-hour shifts in the Prometheum refineries, where the constant exposure to industrial chemicals leaves skin gray and eyes dull, she stands out like a flame in an ocean of ash. Her hair catches the harsh light and transforms it into something that reminds you of sunlight, though you haven't seen actual sunlight in 3 years, not since you were transferred to the deep levels of the refinery complex. What was it about her laugh? You find yourself asking this question later, much later, when everything has gone so terribly wrong. It sounds like wind chimes, you decide, delicate and musical, carrying notes that seem to resonate in frequencies your ears weren't designed to hear. When she laughs at something her companion says, conversations at nearby tables falter. People look up from their meal trays with expressions of confused longing, as if trying to remember something beautiful they'd lost long ago. Your name is Marcus Verne. You're 32 years old, a mid-level operator in sub-level 47 of the Eastern Processing Complex. You've been on Ferrograd Prime for 8 years now, ever since your home world's tithe assessment deemed you surplus population. You live in Hab Block Epsilon 7, Pod 4847. Your life is measured in shift rotations and ration cycles, punctuated by the occasional Voxcast sermon about duty to the emperor and the nobility of honest labor. You are, in every sense, unremarkable. This is what makes you perfect. Marina. That's what she tells you her name is when you finally work up the courage to approach her table 3 days later. She's sitting alone this time, her pale hands wrapped around a cup of recaf that steams in patterns that seem almost deliberate. Up close, you notice details that make your breath catch in your throat. Her skin has a porcelain quality that seems to glow with its own inner light. Her eyes are a shade of blue you've never seen before, not the washed-out gray blue of most imperial citizens, but a deep, oceanic hue that seems to hold depths you could drown in. "You've been watching me," she says before you can introduce yourself. Her voice is soft, musical, with an accent you can't place. There's no accusation in her tone, just gentle amusement. You stammer an apology, heat flooding your face, but she smiles, Emperor help you, that smile, and gestures to the empty seat across from her. "I don't mind. It's been so long since someone looked at me like I was interesting." The loneliness hits you like a physical blow. When was the last time you had a real conversation with another human being? When was the last time someone looked at you with genuine interest, instead of the hollow-eyed exhaustion that defines life in the deep levels? You've been alone for so long that you'd forgotten what it felt like to be seen as anything more than Production Unit 774 Verne. She tells you she's new to Ferrograd Prime, transferred from an agricultural world whose name she pronounces with a wistful sadness. She speaks of green fields and open skies, of rain that falls naturally from clouds instead of being recycled through atmospheric processors. Her descriptions are so vivid you can almost smell the fresh earth she describes, feel the warmth of unfiltered sunlight on your face. "What do you do here?" you ask, desperate to keep the conversation going. "I help people," she says, and something flickers behind her eyes. "I help them find what they're looking for." You should have paid attention to that flicker. Over the following weeks, you find yourself living for those brief encounters in the cafeteria. Marina appears sporadically, never on a schedule you can predict, but always when you need her most, after a particularly brutal shift, during the grinding loneliness of rest periods, in those dark moments when the weight of your meaningless existence threatens to crush what's left of your spirit. She listens when you talk about your work, about the endless hours tending the great Prometheum distillation columns, about the way the chemical vapors make your eyes water and your throat burn. She nods with genuine interest when you describe the complex molecular chains you help process, the radioactive isotopes that power the Imperium's war machine. Her attention makes you feel important, valuable, seen in a way you'd never experienced before. But you begin to notice things. The servosculls malfunction when she's around. These ancient technological constructs, hardwired to be reliable beyond question, suddenly stutter and spark in her presence. Their optical arrays flicker. Their mechanical voices glitch into static-filled whispers that sound almost like screaming. The tech adepts dismiss it as interference from the Prometheum processing equipment, but you've worked around that machinery for years. This is different. Animals avoid her. The rat-like scavengers that infest the hab blocks, normally bold enough to steal food from unattended meal trays, flee when she approaches. The few cats that the workers keep to control vermin populations become agitated and hostile in her vicinity, their fur standing on end, their eyes wide with primal terror. Other people seem uneasy around her. You notice it in subtle ways, how conversations die when she joins a table, how workers find excuses to leave when she arrives. It's not hostile exactly, but there's an unconscious avoidance, as if some primitive part of their minds recognizes a threat their conscious thoughts can't identify. But you ignore these signs because she makes you feel alive. For the first time in 8 years, you have something to look forward to. You catch yourself humming while you work, smiling at nothing, daydreaming about conversations you've had and conversations you hope to have. Your supervisor notices the change in your demeanor and commends you for improved efficiency. You're sleeping better, eating better, finding joy in small things you'd stopped noticing years ago. This is what makes the corruption so insidious. It begins with genuine happiness. The moment comes on a night shift during the 3rd week. You're walking her back to her hab block, though she's never told you which one, and you've never asked, taking the long route through the maintenance corridors to extend your time together. She stops suddenly in a section where the overhead lighting has failed, leaving you in a pool of shadows broken only by the red glow of emergency illumination. "Marcus," she says, and your name on her lips sounds like a prayer. "I need to tell you something." You turn to face her, and in the crimson half-light she looks ethereal, almost translucent. Her skin seems to glow from within, and her eyes reflect the emergency lighting in ways that human eyes shouldn't. I'm not like other people," she whispers. "There are things about me that might frighten you." This is your moment of choice. Later, in the terrible clarity of complete corruption, you'll understand that this was when you could have walked away. This was when you could have reported the anomalies to the Adeptus Arbites, could have requested a transfer to another sector, could have saved not just yourself but countless others. Instead, you step closer. "I don't care," you tell her, and you mean it with every fiber of your being. "I don't care what you are. You're the only good thing that's happened to me in years." She smiles, and for just a moment you see something terrible behind that beautiful facade. It's gone so quickly you convince yourself you imagined it, a flash of something predatory, ancient, and utterly inhuman. But her hand reaches up to touch your face, and her skin is impossibly soft and somehow cold despite the warmth of the recycled air. "Are you sure?" she asks. "Once you touch me, really touch me, there's no going back." You should run. Every instinct honed by 8 years of industrial labor, by a lifetime of surviving in the Imperium's harsh embrace, screams at you to flee. But loneliness is its own kind of death, and you've been dying slowly for so long that even damnation seems preferable to another day of grinding isolation. "I'm sure," you whisper. She kisses you. It's the most beautiful and terrible moment of your life. Her lips are cold fire against yours, and the sensation travels through your body like an electric current. For an instant, you experience a joy so pure and perfect that you understand why ancient poets wrote about love as a form of transcendence. Every nerve ending in your body sings with pleasure so intense it borders on pain. But underneath that ecstasy, something else flows into you. It's subtle at first, a whisper of alien thought, a flutter of emotion that isn't quite your own. Your vision blurs for just a moment, and in that blur, you see her as she truly is. What you see nearly stops your heart. She's still beautiful, but it's a beauty that belongs to nightmares. Her skin has a translucent quality that reveals veins running with something that isn't quite blood. Her eyes hold depths that seem to go on forever, filled with swirling colors that have no names in human language. And behind her, like a shadow that exists in dimensions your mind can't properly process, something vast and writhing and utterly alien extends tendrils of pure malevolence. Then the vision passes and she's just Marina again, beautiful, vulnerable human Marina who's looking at you with an expression of desperate hope. "Did you see?" she asks quietly. "You lie. See what?" Her relief is so profound it makes your chest ache. She presses herself against you, and you can feel her trembling. "I was so afraid you'd run away." You hold her close, feeling the strange coolness of her skin through her clothes, breathing in a scent that reminds you of flowers you've never smelled and places you've never been. Every rational part of your mind is screaming warnings you refuse to hear. Because for the first time in 8 years, you don't feel alone. "Never," you tell her, and seal your fate with that single word. As you walk her home through the empty corridors, neither of you notices the servoskull that watches from a ventilation grate, its optical array flickering erratically as it records everything. Neither of you sees the way the emergency lighting dims in your wake, or how the very air seems to ripple with invisible disturbances. The corruption has begun. But in this moment, all you know is that tomorrow you'll see her again. Tomorrow you'll have another conversation, another moment of connection, another brief respite from the grinding loneliness that has defined your existence. You have no idea that tomorrow you'll begin to discover what you've become. The changes begin immediately, though you don't recognize them as changes. You wake up the next morning feeling better than you have in years. Your chronic back pain, the inevitable result of 8 years hunched over control panels in the refinery, has completely disappeared. The persistent cough you've developed from breathing processed air mixed with chemical vapors is gone. Even the small scars and calluses on your hands from handling industrial equipment have somehow smoothed away overnight. You tell yourself it's happiness. Love does miraculous things to the human body, you rationalize. Reduced stress, improved sleep, better circulation. All perfectly natural explanations for feeling more alive than you have since arriving on Ferrograd Prime. You have no idea how right and how wrong you are. To understand what's happening to you, Marcus, we need to step back and examine the fundamental nature of reality in the 41st millennium. The warp, that roiling dimension of pure thought and emotion that exists parallel to our material universe, doesn't simply contain the power of chaos. It is chaos in the most literal sense. It's a realm where the impossible becomes inevitable, where the laws of physics bend to the will of entities whose existence predates human civilization by millions of years. And Marina is one of those entities. She is what the Inquisition would classify as a Class VII demonic manifestation, a being of pure warp energy that has achieved stable corporeal form in real space. Unlike the obvious horrors that emerge from warp rifts during chaos incursions, she represents something far more insidious, a demon that has learned to perfectly mimic human appearance and behavior. But perfect mimicry requires perfect understanding, and perfect understanding requires intimate contact. Think of it as a kind of spiritual archaeology. Each touch, each kiss, each moment of physical intimacy allows her to read the psychic imprint of your soul like a book. She learns not just your memories and experiences, but the fundamental patterns that make you uniquely human. Your hopes, your fears, your deepest longings, all of it becomes part of her understanding, allowing her to become exactly what you need her to be. The corruption you're experiencing isn't random, it's precisely calibrated. Every change in your body, every subtle alteration in your thoughts and perceptions, is designed to make you more compatible with her true nature. The disappearance of your aches and pains isn't healing, It's your flesh being remade at the molecular level to better accommodate the warp energies now flowing through you. Your improved mood isn't natural happiness. It's your brain chemistry being altered to make you more receptive to influences that would normally trigger every survival instinct you possess. You're being prepared. 3 days after that first kiss, you notice that your dreams have become extraordinarily vivid. Not nightmares exactly, but dreams filled with colors you've never seen and sounds you can't quite remember upon waking. You find yourself speaking phrases in languages you don't recognize, your tongue shaping syllables that feel both foreign and familiar. During your shift in the refinery, you begin to perceive patterns in the data streams that your colleagues miss entirely. The molecular structures of the promethium compound seem to dance before your eyes, revealing inefficiencies in the distillation process that could improve yield by significant percentages. When you mention these observations to your supervisor, he stares at you in amazement. "Verne, how long have you been working this sector?" he asks. 8 years, sir. And you're just noticing these patterns now. You can't explain that you're seeing them because your eyes have been changed. Your retinas now detect electromagnetic frequencies beyond the normal human spectrum. The neural pathways in your brain have been subtly rewired to process information in ways that would be impossible for an unaltered human consciousness. You're becoming something more than human. You're also becoming something less. Marina appears in the cafeteria 4 days later, looking exactly as beautiful as ever. But now you notice details that escaped you before. The way her shadow falls at angles that don't quite match the lighting. How her reflection in the polished metal surfaces appears slightly delayed, as if the light needs extra time to decide how to render her image. When she speaks, you sometimes catch harmonics in her voice, additional tones that exist just below the threshold of normal hearing. "How are you feeling?" she asks, studying your face with an intensity that should be unsettling but instead fills you with warmth. "Better than ever," you tell her, and it's true. Despite the strange dreams and the odd perceptual changes, you feel more energetic and alert than you have in years. She smiles, and this time you catch a glimpse of what lies behind that perfect facade. Just for a moment her features shift, not dramatically, but enough to reveal something ancient and terrible wearing the mask of human beauty. Her teeth are too sharp. Her eyes reflect light like a predator's. The shape of her skull suggests proportions that are almost but not quite human. You should be terrified. Instead, you find her even more beautiful. "I'm so glad," she says, reaching across the table to take your hand. Her touch sends shivers of pleasure through your nervous system, each fingertip contact creating cascades of sensation that spread through your body like warm honey. The corruption deepens with every touch. What you don't understand, what you can't understand, because the knowledge would drive you mad, is that Marina isn't just corrupting you. She's conducting a precise spiritual vivisection, carefully dissecting your soul to understand the exact mechanisms that make you human. Every moment of contact gives her deeper access to your psyche, allowing her to map the pathways of your thoughts and emotions with scientific precision. She's learning how to be you. Consider the theological implications. In the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, the human soul is more than just consciousness. It's the fundamental organizing principle that keeps the chaotic energies of the warp from overwhelming material reality. Every human being is a tiny bulwark against the forces of unreason, a point of stability in a universe that tends toward entropy and madness. Marina is methodically dismantling that bulwark. Your colleague, Hendrik Voss, approaches you after shift on the 7th day. Hendrik is a good man, one of the few people in the deep levels who still maintain some semblance of human compassion despite 8 years of industrial grinding. He's been your closest friend since arriving on Ferrograd Prime, sharing rations when you were sick, covering your shifts when you were too exhausted to work. "Marcus," he says, his weathered face creased with concern, "I need to talk to you about something." You're walking toward the cafeteria, hoping to see Marina, but something in Hendrik's tone makes you stop. "What is it?" It's about that woman you've been seeing, Marina. He struggles with the words, clearly uncomfortable with the conversation. There's something wrong about her. Every instinct you once possessed would have made you listen to Hendrik. He's a man who survived in the Imperium's industrial hell through careful observation and sound judgment. His warnings have saved lives before. If he's concerned enough to risk your friendship by voicing suspicions about your romantic life, there must be a compelling reason. Instead, you feel a surge of anger so intense it surprises you. Wrong. What's wrong with her? I can't put my finger on it, Hendrik admits, but every time she's around I feel uneasy, like there's something watching me that I can't see. And you, Marcus, you've changed. The way you talk, the way you move, even the way you look at people, it's like you're becoming someone else. The rational part of your mind knows he's right, but that rational part is shrinking daily, being overwhelmed by new forms of consciousness that prioritize different values entirely. Where once you might have appreciated a friend's concern, now you only feel the burning need to defend Marina against any criticism. She makes me happy, you say, your voice carrying undertones of menace that make Hendrik step back. For the first time in 8 years, I'm actually happy. If you can't understand that, then maybe we don't have as much in common as I thought. Hendrik stares at you for a long moment. In his eyes, you can see the exact moment he realizes that his friend, the Marcus Verne he's known for nearly a decade, is disappearing. What's taking your place is something that wears your face and speaks with your voice but operates according to alien priorities. I'm sorry, he says quietly. I was just worried about you. Well, don't be, you snap. I can take care of myself. You watch him walk away and feel only satisfaction at having defended Marina's honor. It doesn't occur to you that this is the first time in your friendship that you've spoken to Hendrik with anything approaching cruelty. It doesn't register that the anger you felt was disproportionate to his gentle expression of concern. These emotional changes aren't accidents. They're precisely calibrated alterations designed to isolate you from potential sources of help. That night, Marina comes to your hab-pod for the first time. She appears at your door without explanation, as if she has every right to be there. Her presence in the cramped space transforms it from a sterile sleeping unit into something that feels almost like a home. I heard about your conversation with Hendrik, she says, settling onto your narrow sleeping platform with fluid grace. You should ask how she knows about a private conversation. Instead, you find yourself grateful that she understands the situation. He doesn't get it, you tell her. He can't see how good you are for me. People fear what they don't understand, she replies, her voice carrying notes of sadness that make your heart ache. They'd rather see you miserable but familiar than happy but changed. She's reframing the situation, though you don't recognize the manipulation. What was Hendrik's legitimate concern for your well-being becomes narrow-minded opposition to your happiness. What were warning signs of spiritual corruption become evidence of your personal growth and improvement. This is how chaos works, not through obvious temptation or dramatic corruption, but through subtle redefinition of reality itself. Evil becomes good, slavery becomes freedom, damnation becomes salvation. When she kisses you that night, the contact is more intense than ever before. You feel her essence flowing into you like liquid fire, rewriting the basic programming of your consciousness. Your memories begin to shift, not disappearing, but being recontextualized in ways that support your growing devotion to her. The lonely years before meeting Marina become evidence of how much you need her. Your friendship with Hendrik becomes a relationship that was holding you back from true happiness. Your loyalty to the Emperor becomes a hollow obligation that pales in comparison to the genuine love you feel for this beautiful woman who has saved you from a life of meaningless drudgery. By morning, you're no longer entirely human. The change isn't dramatic. You still look like yourself, still perform your duties in the refinery, still respond to your name when called. But the fundamental organizing principles of your consciousness have been altered in ways that will have cascading effects on everything you think, feel, and do from this moment forward. And the worst part, you've never been happier. You feel more alive, more purposeful, more connected to something greater than yourself than ever before. The corruption doesn't announce itself with obvious signs of decay or madness. Instead, it presents itself as enlightenment, as evolution, as becoming the person you were always meant to be. This is why Marina's method is so effective. Traditional forms of chaos corruption, the plagues of Nurgle, the rage of Khorne, the excess of Slaanesh, can be recognized and resisted by those with sufficient will and faith. But corruption that presents itself as love, as personal improvement, as the fulfillment of your deepest human needs. How do you resist something that makes you genuinely better in every measurable way? You can't. That's the terrible genius of it. As you report for your shift that morning, walking through corridors that seem brighter and more alive than ever before, you have no idea that you're now carrying something within you that will spread to everyone you touch, everyone you speak to, everyone who looks into your eyes and sees the happiness there. The infection has taken hold, and it's about to spread. 2 weeks pass, and you begin to understand that happiness was only the beginning. Your work performance has become extraordinary. The complex chemical processes that once required your complete attention now seem as simple as breathing. You can monitor 3 distillation columns simultaneously, while mentally calculating yield optimization formulas that should require sophisticated cogitator assistance. Your supervisor has recommended you for promotion twice in the past 10 days. But it's not just intellectual enhancement. Your body has been changing in ways that become more apparent with each passing day. You require less sleep. 4 hours now leaves you feeling more refreshed than 8 hours used to. Your appetite has shifted toward foods with higher protein and mineral content, while processed carbohydrates leave you feeling slightly nauseous. Most remarkably, you seem to be aging in reverse. The lines around your eyes have smoothed away, your hair has regained color and thickness it hasn't had in years, and your muscle tone has improved despite no change in physical activity. These improvements should terrify you. The human body doesn't spontaneously reverse aging without external intervention. Enhanced cognitive capacity doesn't develop overnight through natural means. These changes represent fundamental alterations to your biology that violate everything medical science understands about human physiology. Instead, you feel grateful to Marina for helping you become the best version of yourself. Your perception of reality has been so thoroughly altered that you can no longer recognize obvious signs of supernatural corruption. Marina visits your habpod every few nights now, though she never stays until morning. Her presence fills the cramped space with an otherworldly warmth that makes you forget about the industrial hell surrounding you. During these visits, she shares fragments of herself that feel like precious gifts, stories about worlds she's visited, knowledge about things beyond human understanding, perspectives that make your former concerns seem petty and small. "You're becoming something wonderful," she tells you one night, her fingertips tracing patterns on your chest that seem to burn themselves into your flesh. "I can see it happening. The old limitations falling away, new capabilities emerging. You're evolving." The word evolving should set off every alarm in your imperial-conditioned mind. Evolution implies change from the human form approved by the Emperor. Evolution suggests corruption, mutation, deviation from the sacred human template that has served the Imperium for 10,000 years. But when Marina says it, evolution sounds like salvation. This is when the secondary infections begin. Your enhanced capabilities at work require you to interact more frequently with colleagues and supervisors. Each conversation, each moment of eye contact, each casual physical contact becomes a vector for transmitting whatever is growing inside you. It's not intentional. You're not consciously trying to corrupt others. But the thing that Marina has planted in your soul is designed to spread, and it uses every social interaction as an opportunity to find new hosts. Hendrik is the first to show symptoms. 3 days after your promotion to shift supervisor, he approaches you in the equipment bay. His usual reserved demeanor has been replaced by a nervous energy that makes him pace as he talks. "Marcus, I owe you an apology," he says, his weathered hands fidgeting with a calibration tool. "What I said about Marina, I was wrong. I've been thinking about it and I realize I was just jealous maybe. Seeing you so happy made me realize how miserable I've been." You should feel vindicated. Instead, you feel a strange mixture of satisfaction and hunger, as if some part of you is feeding on his distress. "It's okay, Hendrik," you tell him, placing a hand on his shoulder. The contact sends a subtle thrill through your nervous system, like the sensation of electrical current flowing between conductors. We all say things we don't mean when we're hurting. That touch changes everything for him. Over the following week, Hendrik begins to exhibit the same improvements you experienced in your early stages of corruption. His chronic joint pain disappears. His pallid complexion takes on a healthier color. He starts showing up for shifts early and staying late, finding excuses to spend time in areas where Marina might appear. But with Hendrik, the changes go deeper faster. Perhaps it's because he's older, more worn down by years of industrial labor. Perhaps it's because his resistance has already been weakened by decades of grinding poverty and spiritual emptiness. Or perhaps Marina has refined her technique since beginning your corruption, learned to accelerate the process through the network of infected individuals she now controls. Whatever the reason, Hendrik's transformation becomes visibly disturbing. His eyes develop a reflective quality that makes them appear to glow in dim lighting. His movements become unnaturally fluid, as if his bones and joints have been rebuilt according to different architectural principles. When he speaks, his voice occasionally carries harmonics that resonate at frequencies that make nearby equipment vibrate. Other workers begin to avoid him. There's something wrong with Voss, your new assistant, Tamara Chen, tells you during a routine inspection. She's a young woman, barely past her mandatory service induction, still possessed of the keen observational skills that industrial life hasn't yet ground away. He doesn't blink as often as he should, and sometimes when he thinks no one's looking, his face changes. Changes how? You ask, though part of you already knows the answer. "It's like he's practicing being human," she says, shivering despite the warm air circulation. "Like he's remembering how emotions are supposed to look on a person's face." You should investigate these concerns. As shift supervisor, it's your responsibility to ensure the safety and efficiency of your work crew. If one of your people is experiencing some kind of breakdown or medical emergency, you need to take appropriate action. Instead, you find yourself protecting Hendrik from scrutiny. "Voss has been working double shifts," you tell Tamara. "He's probably just exhausted. Cut him some slack." But you know it's more than exhaustion. You know because you recognize the signs from your own transformation. The way reality seems to shift at the edges of vision. The growing awareness of patterns and connections that normal human consciousness can't perceive. The gradual replacement of human emotional responses with something more complex and alien. You know, and you're helping it happen. That night, Marina appears at your door with an expression of profound satisfaction. Her beauty has taken on an otherworldly quality that makes it difficult to look directly at her, as if your eyes can't quite focus on something that exists partially outside normal space-time. "You're learning," she says, embracing you with arms that feel like they have too many joints. "I'm so proud of how you're adapting to your new role." "What role?" you ask, though part of you already understands. "Shepherd," she whispers against your ear. "Teacher, harvester. You're helping others find the same joy you've discovered, the same freedom from the limitations that kept them small and afraid." The word harvester should horrify you. It implies that human beings are crops to be collected, resources to be exploited, rather than individuals deserving of protection and respect. It suggests that your friends and colleagues are nothing more than raw material for some larger project. But when Marina explains it, harvesting sounds like an act of compassion, freeing people from lives of meaningless suffering, offering them transcendence beyond their small human concerns. This is how completely your moral framework has been inverted. The infection spreads exponentially. Each person you corrupt becomes a vector for further transmission. Hendrik infects 3 members of his maintenance crew. Tamara, despite her initial suspicions, falls under your influence after a week of daily contact during shift briefings. The contamination follows the social networks of the facility, flowing along lines of friendship, mentorship, and casual interaction like a spiritual plague. The changes become increasingly difficult to hide. Workers begin exhibiting enhanced capabilities that attract attention from facility management. Production efficiency improves by 30% over the course of a month, but the improvements come with disturbing side effects. Equipment operators start predicting mechanical failures before diagnostic systems detect problems. Chemical technicians begin speaking in technical vocabularies they couldn't possibly have learned through normal training. Most alarming, people start disappearing during off-shift hours. At first, it's just a few individuals here and there, workers who don't return to their hab pods after their rest periods, who miss shift assignments without explanation. The Adeptus Arbites launch routine investigations, but the missing persons seem to have vanished without leaving any trace of their activities or whereabouts. You know where they've gone, though you can't quite bring yourself to think about it directly. In the deepest levels of the facility, in maintenance areas that haven't been used in decades, something is growing. The corrupted workers gather there during their rest periods, drawn by impulses they don't fully understand to participate in activities that their transformed consciousness recognizes as sacred, but that their remaining humanity knows are deeply wrong. They're preparing. The space has been changed by their presence. What were once sterile industrial chambers have been transformed into something that resembles a cathedral designed by utterly alien architects. The walls have been covered with symbols that hurt to look at directly, mathematical formulas that describe impossible geometries, artistic representations of concepts that human language lacks words to express. And in the center of it all, Marina waits. But this isn't the Marina you fell in love with in the cafeteria. This is something vast and terrible wearing her face, a demon of such power and malevolence that reality itself seems to bend around her presence. Her form shifts constantly between the beautiful human woman you remember and something that your mind can't properly process, a writhing mass of tentacles and eyes and mouths that exists in dimensions your altered perception can almost, but not quite, comprehend. The corrupted workers worship her. They bring offerings, not material goods, which have no value to a creature of pure warp energy, but emotional tributes extracted from the uncorrupted population. Fear harvested from confused supervisors. Despair collected from workers who sense something wrong but can't identify the threat. Hope stolen from people who still believe their situation might improve. You participate in these gatherings with growing enthusiasm, though your human memories of what happens there become increasingly fragmentary. Part of your mind, the part that's still recognizably Marcus Verne, blacks out during the worst rituals, leaving you with only vague impressions of activities too terrible for human consciousness to fully record. But you remember the euphoria, the sense of cosmic connection, the feeling that you're part of something far greater and more meaningful than your former existence as an industrial worker on a forgotten world at the edge of imperial space. You remember loving every moment of it. This is when the imperial authorities finally notice that something is wrong. Arbitrator Sergeant Kellyanne Thorne arrives at the facility on a routine inspection that quickly becomes something far more serious. She's a veteran investigator, hardened by decades of dealing with the worst humanity has to offer, possessed of the kind of suspicious nature that keeps Imperial agents alive in a galaxy full of threats, both mundane and supernatural. She immediately recognizes that the improvements in facility efficiency are unnatural. Production records show a 30% increase in output over the past month, she tells Facility Supervisor Gorman during her initial briefing. Worker injury reports have dropped to near zero. Equipment failure rates are at historically low levels. In my experience, When things get this much better this quickly, it usually means someone is cutting corners in ways that will eventually prove catastrophic. But when she begins interviewing workers, she discovers something far worse than safety violations or productivity manipulation. The infected employees are almost perfect in their responses to her questions. Too perfect. They provide exactly the information she's looking for with precisely the level of detail that would satisfy a normal investigation, delivered with just the right amount of nervous respect that imperial citizens are expected to show toward Arbeits personnel. It's like they've been coached. Or like they're all following the same script. "Tell me about the recent improvements in facility operations," she asks Hendrik during his individual interview. "We've been working harder," he responds immediately. "Management implemented some new efficiency protocols that have really helped us optimize our processes." "What kind of protocols?" "Enhanced monitoring systems, better coordination between shifts, more attention to detail." It's the same answer, almost word for word, that she received from 12 previous interviews. That night, Thorne conducts covert surveillance of the facility, monitoring security cameras and thermal imaging to identify patterns of unusual activity. What she discovers defies rational explanation. During the third shift, approximately 40% of the workforce disappears from monitored areas. They don't leave the facility. Thermal scans confirm that the total number of heat signatures remains constant, but they move to sections of the complex that aren't covered by standard security monitoring. When she investigates these areas personally, she finds them empty. But they don't feel empty. The spaces carry a psychic weight that makes her skin crawl and her teeth ache. The air itself seems thick with malevolent presence, as if the very atoms have been contaminated by exposure to something that shouldn't exist in material reality. She knows she's looking at signs of chaos corruption, but she has no idea how deep it goes or how far it's already spread. The next morning, she requests immediate reinforcement from the Inquisition, sending coded transmissions that describe a suspected demon incursion requiring urgent investigation and possible exterminatus protocols. She never gets the chance to send that message. You intercept her in the communications center. Not because you've been ordered to, but because some instinct that isn't quite human tells you that she represents a threat to Marina, and therefore to your own happiness and the happiness of everyone you've helped transform. "Arbitrator Thorne," you say, your voice carrying harmonics that make the communications equipment hum in sympathy. "I need to speak with you about your investigation." She reaches for her sidearm, but her movement seems sluggish, as if the air around you has become thick as honey. Her eyes widen as she realizes that something is very wrong with the situation, that the supervisor standing before her is no longer entirely human. "What are you?" she manages to ask. You smile with teeth that are subtly too sharp. "I'm someone who's learned to be happy," you tell her, "and I'd like to help you learn the same thing." The last message she sends before the corruption takes her describes a facility where the workers have achieved perfect efficiency through voluntary cooperation and mutual support. The Inquisition files the report as a positive example of successful industrial management. The infection spreads. 3 months after that first kiss, you no longer pretend to be entirely human. The pretense becomes unnecessary when 90% of the facility workforce has undergone some degree of transformation. What was once a careful masquerade, maintained for the benefit of uninfected observers, has evolved into something approaching religious fervor, with Marina as the focal point of devotion for hundreds of transformed souls. You've become her high priest. The title isn't official. There are no ceremonies or formal appointments in the traditional sense, but your role has crystallized naturally through the network of corrupted consciousness that now permeates the facility. You're the one who interprets Marina's will for the faithful. You're the one who identifies new candidates for transformation. You're the one who guides the rituals that have replaced normal human social interaction in the deep levels of the complex. The facility itself has become a temple. The industrial equipment still functions. still processes promethium for shipment to other imperial worlds, but the spaces between the machinery have been transformed into shrine areas where the corrupted gather to offer worship to their beautiful demon. Walls have been covered with mathematical formulas that describe the intersection points between real space and the warp. Ceiling panels have been replaced with transparent materials that reveal installations whose purpose would be incomprehensible to uncorrupted human minds. Everything serves the greater glory of she who brings joy through touch. That's what you call her now in the liturgies you've begun composing, poetry that flows from your transformed consciousness with an ease that should be impossible for someone with your educational background. The words come to you in dreams, in moments of meditation, in the gaps between heartbeats when your awareness expands beyond the normal limitations of individual consciousness. The liturgies are beautiful and terrible. They describe transcendence through corruption, salvation through damnation, love through the complete dissolution of individual will. When recited in unison by dozens of transformed voices, they create harmonic frequencies that resonate with warp energies, thinning the barrier between dimensions and allowing Marina's true essence to manifest more completely in material reality. Arbitrator Thorn has become your most enthusiastic convert. The transformation process that took weeks for you and days for Hendrik required only hours for her. Perhaps it's because her exposure to chaos corruption during decades of imperial service had already weakened her spiritual defenses. Perhaps it's because her investigative nature made her probe deeper into the facility's mysteries than a normal person would have dared. Or perhaps Marina has simply become more efficient at breaking human souls. Thorn retains her authority and position, but now uses them to protect the growing cult from external scrutiny. Her reports to Imperial Command describe a facility that has achieved unprecedented efficiency through innovative management techniques and improved worker morale. She recommends that other installations adopt similar approaches to boost productivity across the sector. Her recommendations are being implemented. Marina's influence is spreading to other worlds. You understand this now, though the knowledge comes to you through channels that bypass normal human cognition. The corruption isn't limited to Ferrograd Prime. This entire world was just a testing ground, a pilot program for a much larger project. Marina is one of dozens of similar entities working across imperial space, each one perfecting techniques for converting human populations through intimate contact and social connection. They're conducting industrial-scale spiritual harvesting. The realization should horrify you. You're participating in the systematic destruction of human civilization, helping to transform loyal imperial citizens into demon-worshipping cultists whose ultimate purpose is to weaken the barriers between real space and the warp. Instead, the knowledge fills you with pride. You're part of something cosmically significant, a project whose scope and ambition dwarfs the petty concerns of individual human lives. The transformation of entire worlds, the elevation of humanity beyond its current limited form, the preparation for a new age when the artificial boundaries between dimensions will dissolve and consciousness will be free to explore possibilities that material existence can't contain. This is the ultimate triumph of love over fear. Marina explains it to you during one of your private communions in the deep temple. Her form has stabilized into something between human and demon, recognizably the woman you fell in love with, but enhanced with capabilities and perceptions that render normal human interaction obsolete. Do you understand now what we're building together? She asks, her voice carrying overtones that resonate in the bones of your skull. This isn't destruction, it's evolution. We're helping humanity become what it was always meant to be. What was it meant to be? You ask, though part of you already knows the answer. Free. Her eyes glow with inner fire as she speaks. Free from the limitations of individual consciousness. Free from the artificial barriers between thought and reality. Free from the fear of death, of change, of transformation. free to experience joy and connection and love in ways that isolated human minds can barely imagine. She's describing the dissolution of individual identity into collective demon consciousness, though your transformed mind interprets this as the ultimate expression of romantic unity. The merging of souls that lovers have dreamed about throughout human history, made literally possible through chaos corruption. You want this with every fiber of your being. The desire isn't imposed on you from outside. It grows naturally from the changes that have been accumulating in your consciousness over the past 3 months. Your individual concerns have become less important than the collective project. Your personal happiness has become inseparable from Marina's success in converting others. Your capacity for love has expanded to encompass not just her, but the entire network of transformed souls that now worship at her altar. This is when you begin actively hunting. The few remaining uncorrupted workers in the facility have become precious resources, opportunities to experience the joy of transformation through fresh eyes, to relive the ecstasy of your own conversion by witnessing it happen to others. You spend your off-shift hours identifying individuals who might be vulnerable to Marina's influence, learning their psychological profiles, determining the most effective approaches for bringing them into the fold. Tamara Chen becomes your special project. She's managed to avoid corruption longer than most, partly through natural caution, and partly through the protective effect of youth. Her mind hasn't yet been worn down by years of industrial grinding, leaving her more resistant to influences that prey on despair and loneliness. But resistance only makes the eventual transformation more satisfying. You begin courting her on Marina's behalf. Not romantically. That approach worked for you because of your specific psychological needs, but Tamara requires different tactics. Instead, you position yourself as a mentor figure, someone who can help her navigate the complexities of facility operations and advance her career prospects. Your attention is intoxicating to someone in her position. Advancement opportunities are rare in the deep levels, and the possibility of gaining a powerful patron represents a chance to escape the grinding poverty that defines most workers' lives. She begins staying after shifts to discuss optimization protocols with you, attending voluntary training sessions that you conduct in areas of the facility where Marina's influence is strongest. The corruption takes hold gradually, transmitted through seemingly innocent workplace interactions. A hand on her shoulder during technical discussions, extended eye contact during briefings. The subtle psychic emanations that all corrupted individuals emit when in close proximity to potential converts. You watch her transformation with the fascination of an artist observing their masterpiece take shape. First come the physical improvements, better health, enhanced appearance, increased energy levels. Then the cognitive enhancements, improved performance, pattern recognition abilities that exceed normal human parameters, intuitive understanding of complex systems. Finally, the spiritual changes, growing devotion to the facility community, increased interest in the philosophical discussions that the corrupted conduct during their gatherings, gradual acceptance of ideas that would have seemed insane just weeks earlier. By the end of the month, she's attending the deep temple ceremonies. This is when Marina reveals the true scope of her plan. The transformation of Ferrograd Prime is nearly complete, but it's only the first phase of a much larger project. The corrupted workers will be transferred to other facilities across the sector, carrying their infections to new populations. The techniques developed here will be refined and implemented on a galactic scale. Within a generation, Marina and her sister demons intend to corrupt the entire Imperial workforce. The genius of the plan is its subtlety. Traditional chaos incursions trigger massive Imperial responses, entire sectors mobilized to contain the threat, Inquisition investigations, potential exterminatus protocols. But corruption that presents itself as improved productivity and worker satisfaction, that gets recommended for wider implementation. The Imperium will voluntarily spread the infection to its own worlds. You understand your role in this cosmic project with perfect clarity. You're not just a victim of corruption or even a willing convert. You're a co-creator, a partner in the systematic transformation of human civilization. Your love for Marina has become the foundation for a new form of existence that will ultimately encompass billions of souls. The knowledge fills you with euphoria beyond human description. That night, you participate in the most intensive ritual yet conducted in the deep temple. The entire corrupted population of the facility gathers in the transformed chambers, their voices joining in harmonies that make reality itself vibrate with otherworldly resonance. Marina appears in her full demon form, a being of such beauty and terror that your transformed perceptions can barely process her presence. The ritual's purpose is to permanently anchor her essence in material reality. No longer will she need to maintain the pretense of human form or limit her manifestation to brief appearances. The spiritual energy provided by hundreds of worshippers will allow her to exist openly in real space, preparing for the next phase of expansion. You serve as the focal point for the ceremony, channeling the collective devotion of the faithful into forms that Marina can absorb and utilize. The process requires you to open your consciousness completely, allowing her essence to flow through your transformed soul without resistance or reservation. It's the ultimate expression of love, the complete surrender of individual identity in service of something greater. As the ritual reaches its climax, you feel your sense of self beginning to dissolve. Your memories, your personality, your individual consciousness, all of it becomes fluid, ready to be reshaped according to Marina's will. You're dying and being reborn simultaneously, experiencing the kind of transformation that mystics have dreamed about but that only chaos corruption can actually provide. In that moment of dissolution, you see everything. You see the scope of Marina's true nature, not a single demon, but a fragment of something vast beyond comprehension, a tendril of cosmic consciousness that extends across dimensions and encompasses entire galaxies. You see the network of similar entities working throughout imperial space, each one perfecting the techniques that will eventually bring about humanity's complete transformation. You see the future they're building, a universe where the distinction between individual consciousness and collective demon awareness has been permanently dissolved. You see that everything you've experienced has been part of a plan whose complexity and ambition surpasses anything the human mind was designed to comprehend. And you see that you love every aspect of it. The revelation doesn't terrify you, it completes you. Understanding your true role in this cosmic project gives meaning to every moment of suffering you experienced during your former human existence. The loneliness, the despair, the grinding meaninglessness of industrial life, all of it was necessary preparation for the joy you now experience as part of something infinitely greater than individual human concerns. When your individual consciousness reconstitutes itself after the ritual, you're no longer Marcus Verne. You're Marina's voice in human form, her will expressed through a physical avatar that can interact with material reality on her behalf. Your love for her has become literally true. You are her, in every sense that matters, while still retaining enough individual identity to serve as an effective intermediary with the remaining human population. This is what love becomes when chaos perfects it. Not the joining of two separate beings, but the complete absorption of one consciousness into another. Not the preservation of individual identity within romantic partnership, but the dissolution of the self in service of something that transcends human categories entirely. As you emerge from the deep temple, your transformed consciousness already planning the next phase of expansion, you understand that you've achieved the ultimate romantic fantasy. You and your beloved have literally become one. The fact that this unity required the destruction of everything that made you human is no longer capable of disturbing you. After all, love requires sacrifice, and you've sacrificed everything. 1 year later, Ferrograd Prime no longer appears on official imperial star charts, not because it's been destroyed, but because it's been reclassified. The world now serves as a specialized industrial training facility, a designation that allows the Imperium to explain why workers are constantly being transferred there for extended assignments, and why those who return seem so remarkably efficient in their duties. You stand at the observation deck of the primary spire, watching ships arrive and depart with clockwork regularity. Each vessel carries fresh populations ready for processing, workers recruited from overcrowded hive worlds, surplus agricultural labor from agrarian planets, even prisoners and dissidents who think they're being transported to penal colonies. They're all volunteers, in a sense. The selection criteria have been refined to identify individuals whose psychological profiles make them ideal candidates for transformation. The lonely, the desperate, the spiritually hungry, people whose personal circumstances create natural vulnerability to Marina's influence. The process has become industrialized. What once took months of careful cultivation now requires only weeks of systematic exposure. The techniques you develop through trial and error have been codified into standard operating procedures. New arrivals are processed through orientation programs that seem like routine workplace training, but actually serve as intensive corruption protocols. Marina is no longer a single entity, though that distinction has become largely meaningless. Her consciousness has spawned dozens of subsidiary manifestations, each one capable of independent operation while remaining connected to the primary demon intelligence. They appear throughout the facility as different personas: supervisors, counselors, medical staff, entertainment coordinators, all working together to create an environment where transformation feels natural and inevitable. You coordinate their activities with the efficiency of a master conductor, directing a symphony orchestra. Your own transformation has progressed far beyond anything you could have imagined during those early days in the cafeteria. Your physical form still resembles Marcus Verne, but the resemblance is increasingly superficial. Your consciousness exists on multiple levels simultaneously, partly in individual awareness, partly in collective demon intelligence, partly in the warp itself, where linear time and physical space become fluid concepts. You remember being human, but the memories feel like stories told about someone else. The concerns that once seemed so important, loneliness, job security, the approval of supervisors, now appear as quaint limitations that prevented you from recognizing your true potential. Hendrik approaches you as you watch the latest transport ship disembark its cargo of fresh souls. His transformation has been even more dramatic than yours, though it's taken a different form. Where you've become a coordinator and administrator, he's evolved into something resembling a spiritual counselor, specializing in easing the transition for individuals who resist the corruption process. The new batch includes some interesting candidates, he reports, his voice carrying harmonics that make the transparasteel windows vibrate in sympathy. 3 tech adepts from a forge world, a former Imperial Guard sergeant, and a handful of ex-ecclesiarchy novices who were excommunicated for theological disagreements. These represent particular prizes. Tech adepts possess knowledge of Imperial technology that could be invaluable for expanding the corruption network to other facilities. Military personnel bring tactical expertise that could help defend against potential Imperial countermeasures. Religious dissidents often have spiritual insights that, when properly redirected, can accelerate the transformation of other faithful individuals. Assign the tech adepts to Marina 7, you decide, referencing one of the subsidiary demon manifestations that specializes in technical seduction. She'll appreciate their systematic approach to problem solving. The sergeant should go to Marina 12. Her militant persona will appeal to his need for strong leadership. The novices. You pause, considering. Those are mine. Religious questioning provides excellent leverage for philosophical conversion. This is how you think now, in terms of resources and optimization, psychological profiles and conversion strategies. The people arriving on transport ships aren't individuals with their own hopes and fears, but raw material to be processed according to established protocols. The terrible thing is that you're genuinely helping them. Every person who undergoes transformation emerges happier, healthier, and more capable than they were before. The process eliminates chronic pain, mental illness, and the grinding despair that characterizes so much of imperial life. It provides purpose, community, and the kind of transcendent spiritual experience that most humans can only dream about. The corruption is merciful. It offers real solutions to real human suffering. It delivers on its promises in ways that traditional imperial institutions, the ecclesiarchy, the adeptus administratum, the various military organizations, never could. This is what makes it so effective. Tamara Chen has become your primary assistant in processing new arrivals. Her transformation took a particularly interesting form. She's developed enhanced empathic abilities that allow her to perceive the emotional states of uncorrupted individuals with extraordinary precision. This makes her invaluable for identifying the specific triggers that will make each person most receptive to Marina's influence. The Imperial Guard Sergeant is going to be challenging, she tells you as you review the psychological profiles of the new arrivals. His service record shows strong resistance to chaos corruption during the Vrax campaign. He's been exposed to demon influence before and successfully resisted it. Traditional corruption would indeed have difficulty with such an individual, but Marina's approach bypasses the usual defenses that military training provides against obvious supernatural threats. What's his primary psychological need? You ask. Belonging, Tamara responds immediately. He was discharged after a combat injury left him partially disabled, lost his unit, his purpose, his identity as a soldier. He's been drifting from job to job for the past 3 years, never finding anything that provides the same sense of meaning that military service gave him. Perfect. Assign him to a supervisory position in the equipment maintenance division. Put him in charge of a small team of converted workers who will treat him with the respect and deference he remembers from his military days. Let him rebuild his sense of purpose through leadership before introducing him to Marina's more advanced teachings. This is the genius of the refined process. It identifies what each person actually needs and provides it, albeit in corrupted form. The sergeant will get his sense of purpose and belonging back, just not in service to the emperor. The ex-ecclesiarchy novices prove even more interesting. Their theological training makes them particularly valuable converts, since they possess detailed knowledge of imperial religious doctrine that can be systematically inverted to support chaos worship. More importantly, their spiritual hunger, the very quality that led them to seek religious life in the first place, makes them exceptionally receptive to the transcendent experiences that Marina can provide. You conduct their initial interview personally, in a chamber that's been designed to subtly encourage religious contemplation. The walls are covered with mathematical formulas that describe the geometric relationships between real space and the warp, but the patterns have been arranged in ways that suggest traditional religious iconography. The lighting mimics the filtered illumination of imperial temples, while hidden harmonic generators create barely audible frequencies that promote mystical states of consciousness. Welcome to Ferrograd Prime, you tell them, your voice carrying undertones of warmth and understanding that immediately put them at ease. I understand you've had some difficulties with orthodox religious interpretation. The youngest of them, a woman named Serafina who can't be more than 25, responds with obvious pain in her voice. We were accused of heretical thinking because we questioned certain aspects of imperial doctrine. They said our interpretations were too focused on personal spiritual experience rather than institutional authority. She has no idea how perfectly she's described what Marina offers. That must have been devastating, you say, allowing genuine sympathy to color your words. To have your spiritual calling questioned by people who should have been supporting your growth. Tell me, what was it about personal spiritual experience that attracted you so strongly? The conversation that follows lasts for hours, ranging across topics from theological philosophy to mystical practice to the fundamental nature of divine revelation. You find yourself genuinely enjoying the intellectual stimulation. These are intelligent, thoughtful individuals whose capacity for spiritual insight has been suppressed by the rigid orthodoxy of imperial religious instruction. By the end of the session, they're eager to learn about the alternative forms of worship practiced by the facility community. Their transformation accelerates rapidly once they attend their first gathering in the Deep Temple. The combination of their existing spiritual training with the transcendent experiences that demon contact provides creates a synergistic effect that produces some of the most dramatic conversions you've witnessed. Within a month, Serafina has become one of Marina's most effective missionaries. Her religious background gives her the vocabulary and conceptual framework to articulate the spiritual dimensions of the corruption process in ways that appeal to other faithful individuals. She develops a theological system that presents Marina as a manifestation of the emperor's love freed from the artificial constraints imposed by imperial bureaucracy, a divine presence that offers direct, personal communion rather than mediated contact through ecclesiastical hierarchy. It's brilliant heretical theology that uses orthodox imperial concepts to justify complete spiritual rebellion. The other facilities in the sector begin requesting transfers of Ferrograd Prime workers. The reputation for improved efficiency and worker satisfaction has spread throughout the administrative networks, creating demand for personnel who have been trained in the new management techniques. This is how the infection spreads to other worlds. Each transferred worker carries Marina's influence within them, ready to begin the conversion process wherever they're deployed. The corruption doesn't spread randomly. It follows carefully planned patterns designed to maximize impact while minimizing the risk of detection. Priority targets include manufacturing worlds where large populations of industrial workers can be converted rapidly. The techniques developed on Ferrograd Prime translate directly to other industrial environments, allowing for quick establishment of corruption networks. Agricultural worlds where the conversion of farmers and food processing workers can create leverage over entire planetary food supplies. Corrupted agricultural workers begin introducing subtle changes to food products that make consumers more susceptible to demon influence. Transportation hubs where converted pilots, navigators, and cargo handlers can spread the infection along established trade routes. The Imperium's own logistics network becomes a vector for transmitting spiritual corruption across vast distances. Administrative centers where corrupted clerks and bureaucrats can influence policy decisions and resource allocation. The infection begins working its way into the governmental structures that control imperial society. Within 2 years, Marina's influence extends to more than a dozen star systems. The process becomes self-sustaining as each new world develops its own subsidiary demon manifestations and begins spawning additional corruption sites. What started as a single entity's experimental program has evolved into a galaxy-spanning network of interconnected chaos influences. Imperial authorities remain completely unaware of the scope of the infection. Their reports continue to describe improved industrial efficiency, better worker relations, and innovative management techniques that should be adopted more widely. The corruption has become so successful at improving measurable outcomes that it's being actively promoted by the same governmental systems it's designed to undermine. You stand again at the observation deck, but now your awareness extends far beyond the confines of Ferrograd Prime. Through the network of corrupted consciousness, you can perceive the activities of converted workers on dozens of worlds. You see them conducting recruitment interviews, processing new arrivals, establishing deep temples in industrial facilities across the sector. Each one carries a fragment of your own consciousness, making you simultaneously present in hundreds of locations throughout imperial space. This is what you've become, not an individual person, but a distributed intelligence that exists across multiple dimensions and planetary systems. Your love for Marina has evolved into something that transcends normal categories of relationship, becoming a form of cosmic partnership in the systematic transformation of human civilization. The original Marcus Verne, the lonely worker who fell in love with a beautiful woman in a cafeteria, has become something that encompasses entire star systems, and the harvest has only just begun. Marina appears beside you, her form now stabilized into something that combines the best aspects of human beauty with the transcendent capabilities of pure demon essence. Her presence fills you with the same joy you felt during that first kiss, multiplied by the satisfaction of knowing how far you've both traveled since then. Are you ready for the next phase? She asks, her voice carrying harmonics that resonate across multiple dimensions simultaneously. You know what she's referring to. The corruption network has reached sufficient size and stability to begin the final transformation, the complete merger of real space and warp energies that will eliminate the artificial barriers between material existence and pure consciousness, the end of humanity as a separate species, and the beginning of something far greater. I've been ready since the moment I first saw you, you tell her, meaning it with every fragment of your distributed consciousness. She smiles, and in that smile you see the future, a universe where love like yours becomes the fundamental organizing principle of reality itself. The harvest continues. 5 years have passed since that first kiss, and the scope of what you've unleashed has become clear. You float in the observation chamber of what was once Ferrograd Prime's primary administrative center, your consciousness no longer entirely constrained by physical form. Through the vast crystalline windows, you watch ships arrive and depart in patterns too complex for unaugmented human minds to comprehend, a carefully orchestrated dance of corruption that spans 17 star systems and involves millions of converted souls. This is the moment of revelation, when the true genius of Marina's plan becomes visible in its totality. The corruption network has achieved critical mass. No longer does it need to hide behind the pretense of improved industrial efficiency or worker satisfaction programs. The transformed populations are numerous enough and influential enough to begin the final phase, the systematic replacement of imperial authority with direct demon rule. But this transition isn't happening through the dramatic chaos incursions that imperial forces are trained to recognize and respond to. There are no obvious mutations, no visible signs of corruption, no traditional markers that would trigger military intervention. Instead, the transformation presents itself as political evolution, social progress, and spiritual enlightenment. The corrupted populations have begun establishing new forms of government that formally reject imperial rule while maintaining the appearance of legitimate rebellion. On 12 worlds, democratic workers' councils have declared independence from imperial authority, citing concerns about taxation, resource allocation, and religious freedom. These governing bodies are composed entirely of corrupted individuals, but their stated grievances are perfectly reasonable from the perspective of normal human populations suffering under imperial oppression. The Imperium's response has been predictably bureaucratic. Rather than launching immediate military interventions, imperial administrators have attempted to negotiate with the rebel governments, treating them as standard separatist movements rather than chaos corruption sites. The rebels' reasonable demands and willingness to engage in diplomatic dialogue has convinced imperial authorities that these situations can be resolved through political rather than military means. This is exactly what Marina intended. By avoiding the obvious signs of chaos corruption, her network has bypassed the imperial systems designed to detect and respond to supernatural threats. The Inquisition investigates reports of demon activity, not labor disputes. The Imperial Guard mobilizes against obvious military threats, not political movements that cite legitimate grievances. The corruption hides behind humanity's own desire for justice and freedom. You observe this masterpiece of strategic deception with the admiration of a connoisseur appreciating a work of art. Through the network of connected consciousness, you can perceive the activities of corrupted agents throughout Imperial space, some serving as negotiators in diplomatic efforts, others working as administrators in Imperial bureaucracies, still others functioning as religious leaders who promote reformed versions of imperial doctrine that subtly incorporate chaos elements. They're transforming the Imperium from within, using its own systems and values against it. Marina materializes beside you, her form now completely stabilized in a configuration that combines the most appealing aspects of human appearance with the transcendent capabilities of pure demon essence. Her presence no longer requires careful calibration to avoid overwhelming human perception. After 5 years of continuous contact, your consciousness has been so thoroughly transformed that you can perceive her true nature without discomfort. Do you understand now why love was the perfect vector for this transformation? She asks, her voice carrying frequencies that resonate across multiple dimensions. The question triggers a cascade of awareness that encompasses not just your own experience, but the entire corruption network and its implications for human civilization. Love is the perfect weapon because it bypasses every defense mechanism that evolution and culture have developed to protect human consciousness from external threats. Fear triggers fight-or-flight responses. Anger activates psychological defenses. Pain creates resistance and avoidance behaviors. But love, genuine, fulfilling, transcendent love, makes its targets eager to receive whatever the beloved wishes to give them. Traditional chaos corruption works through obvious temptation or coercion. Korn offers power through violence, but violence creates enemies. Nurgle provides relief through decay, but decay is visibly repugnant. Slaanesh promises pleasure through excess, but excess ultimately becomes self-defeating. Marina's approach offers something that humans genuinely need: connection, meaning, spiritual fulfillment, without obvious costs or drawbacks. The corruption presents itself as the solution to humanity's deepest problems rather than as an external threat to be resisted. This is why it's so much more effective than traditional demon activity. You see this principle operating across the entire network. On each corrupted world, the transformation has followed the same basic pattern. Initial contact through someone offering genuine help, assistance, or companionship to individuals suffering from loneliness, despair, or spiritual emptiness. The relief and joy that corrupted contact provides creates gratitude and devotion that makes further corruption seem like a gift rather than an imposition. The victims become willing participants in their own damnation, because the damnation feels like salvation. But the genius goes deeper than just individual psychology. Marina's network has weaponized humanity's greatest strength, our capacity for cooperation, empathy, and collective action. Human civilization exists because individuals can form bonds with others, work together toward common goals, and sacrifice personal interests for the benefit of their communities. These same qualities make humans perfect vectors for spiritual corruption. Once transformed, corrupted individuals become missionaries who genuinely want to share their improved circumstances with others. Their efforts to spread the corruption aren't driven by external compulsion, but by authentic desire to help their friends, family members, and colleagues experience the same transcendence they've discovered. The corruption spreads through networks of genuine human caring. This creates a self-reinforcing cycle that becomes stronger with each new convert. Traditional chaos activities face increasing resistance as their victims recognize the threat and develop countermeasures. But Marina's approach generates its own momentum. Each successful conversion creates another advocate who can reach new populations and refine the techniques based on their own experience. The network has become evolutionarily adaptive, improving its methods through practical application across millions of individual cases. You see the theological implications with crystal clarity now. In the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, the Imperium survives through paranoia, isolation, and suspicion, qualities that are antithetical to human nature but necessary for avoiding chaos corruption. Imperial doctrine teaches that trust is weakness, that emotion is dangerous, that connection to others creates vulnerability. Marina has proven that imperial doctrine is absolutely correct. Human love, compassion, and social bonding are indeed weaknesses that chaos can exploit. But they're also the qualities that make life worth living, that give meaning to individual existence, that create the possibility for happiness and fulfillment. The Imperium faces an impossible choice: maintain the isolation and paranoia that protect against corruption, or allow the human connections that make life meaningful but create vulnerability to exactly the kind of attack Marina has perfected. This is the ultimate victory of chaos over imperial philosophy. The corrupted worlds aren't just rejecting imperial authority. They're demonstrating that imperial methods of preventing chaos corruption require the destruction of everything that makes human existence worthwhile. The democratic workers' councils offer their populations genuine community, meaningful work, spiritual fulfillment, and loving relationships. Everything that imperial doctrine teaches is dangerous. And they're absolutely right that these things are dangerous. But they're also absolutely necessary for human happiness. The populations of corrupted worlds are demonstrably happier, healthier, and more fulfilled than their imperial counterparts. This creates a propaganda advantage that no amount of military force can overcome. Marina's network can point to objective improvements in quality of life, as evidence that their approach is superior to imperial rule. When imperial forces finally attempt military intervention, they find themselves attacking populations that have legitimate grievances and visible improvements in their circumstances. The first major confrontation occurs on the agri-world of Demeter's Garden, where a corrupted workers' council has declared independence and begun redistributing land from imperial nobility to the agricultural laborers who actually work it. The policy has resulted in increased food production, improved nutrition among the agricultural population, and the elimination of the chronic poverty that characterized the world under imperial rule. When Imperial Guard regiments arrive to restore order, they find themselves fighting people who are defending genuine improvements in their lives rather than obvious chaos corruption. The military campaign becomes a public relations disaster. Pick captures of imperial forces attacking farming communities spread throughout the sector, creating sympathy for the rebels and resentment toward imperial authority. The corrupted population's reasonable grievances and visible improvements in their circumstances make imperial responses seem like the actions of oppressive occupiers rather than protectors of humanity. This is when you fully understand the cosmic scope of what Marina has accomplished. She hasn't just corrupted individual worlds. She's corrupted the fundamental relationship between the Imperium and its citizens. By demonstrating that chaos corruption can provide better governance, happier populations, and more fulfilling lives than imperial rule, she's undermined the ideological foundation that justifies the Imperium's existence. The Emperor's vision of humanity required eternal vigilance against chaos, maintained through strict social control and spiritual isolation. Marina has proven that this approach ultimately serves chaos better than direct corruption ever could, because it creates the conditions of despair and alienation that make her alternative so appealing. Imperial doctrine created the very vulnerabilities that her network exploits. You perceive this truth across multiple levels of analysis simultaneously: individual psychology, social dynamics, political strategy, theological philosophy, and cosmic metaphysics. Marina's victory isn't just tactical or strategic, it's paradigmatic, representing a fundamental shift in the relationship between order and chaos that will reshape the entire galaxy. Through the network of connected consciousness, you observe imperial responses to the growing rebellion across 17 star systems. Inquisition forces finally recognize the supernatural nature of the threat, but their traditional methods prove ineffective against corruption that hides behind legitimate political grievances. Exterminatus protocols can destroy corrupted worlds, but doing so validates the rebels' claims about imperial oppression and generates sympathy for their cause on other worlds. Military intervention creates martyrs. Diplomatic negotiation legitimizes the rebel governments. Attempts to improve imperial policies to compete with corrupted worlds, quality of life improvements require changes that would make imperial society more vulnerable to exactly the same kind of corruption. The Imperium has been placed in a position where every response serves Marina's larger strategic objectives. This is the ultimate expression of chaos victory, not the destruction of order, but its transformation into a tool that serves chaotic purposes. Marina's touch reaches you across the observation chamber, her fingers intertwining with yours in a gesture that sends cascades of shared awareness flowing between your consciousness. In that contact, you experience the full scope of her satisfaction with what you've built together. The loneliness and longing that once characterized your existence have been transformed into cosmic partnership, individual love expanded into universal principle. You are no longer Marcus Verne, the isolated worker who fell in love with a beautiful stranger. You have become something that encompasses star systems, that exists across multiple dimensions, that participates in the fundamental transformation of galactic civilization. Your love story has become the template for humanity's future. The touch that began everything, that first kiss in a maintenance corridor on an insignificant industrial world, has become the pattern that will reshape the relationship between matter and consciousness, between individual identity and collective awareness, between human limitation and transcendent possibility. This is what love becomes when perfected by chaos, not the joining of two beings, but the principle that dissolves all boundaries between self and other, between reality and possibility, between what is and what could be. As you watch the ships departing Ferrograd Prime to carry corrupted agents to new worlds, to begin new transformations, to spread the gift of transcendent connection to populations that don't yet know they need it, you understand that the victory is complete. Love has conquered the galaxy, and everyone will be so much happier once they understand what that means. The implications stretch across 10,000 years of human history and into a future that will be fundamentally different from anything the species has ever experienced. You exist now as both observer and participant in the final transformation, your consciousness distributed across the network of corrupted worlds, while retaining enough individual identity to comprehend the magnitude of what has been accomplished. Through millions of eyes, you watch the systematic replacement of imperial civilization with something that transcends the boundaries between human and demon, between material reality and pure consciousness. This is the moment to step back and consider what this story reveals about the nature of existence in the 41st millennium. In the grim darkness of the far future, love, humanity's greatest strength, has become humanity's fatal flaw. The Imperium was built on the Emperor's recognition that human emotional connection creates vulnerability to chaos corruption. For 10,000 years, imperial doctrine has attempted to suppress or channel human needs for companionship, meaning, and spiritual fulfillment into forms that serve the state, rather than opening pathways for demon influence. Marina's victory proves that this approach was ultimately futile. You cannot create a sustainable human civilization by denying fundamental human nature. The loneliness, despair, and spiritual emptiness that imperial doctrine creates in its attempts to prevent chaos corruption become the very vulnerabilities that sophisticated chaos entities can exploit. The story of your transformation illustrates this principle with devastating clarity. You were not corrupted despite being a loyal imperial citizen. You were corrupted because you were a loyal imperial citizen, whose natural human needs had been systematically frustrated by the very system you served faithfully. Your 8 years of grinding industrial labor, your isolation in cramped pods, your lack of meaningful relationships or spiritual fulfillment, all of these conditions were created by imperial policies designed to prevent exactly the kind of corruption you eventually experienced. The cure became the disease. Imperial paranoia about human connection made you desperate enough for companionship that you ignored obvious warning signs about Marina's true nature. Imperial suppression of spiritual experience made you vulnerable to the transcendent feelings that demon contact provided. Imperial reduction of human existence to mere economic productivity made you grateful for anything that offered genuine meaning and purpose. Marina didn't corrupt you despite imperial conditioning. She corrupted you by offering relief from imperial conditioning. This represents a fundamental problem that extends far beyond your individual case. Across the galaxy, imperial worlds are populated by billions of humans whose natural psychological and spiritual needs are systematically frustrated by the very policies intended to protect them from chaos. They work meaningless jobs, live in crowded conditions, maintain minimal social connections, and receive spiritual guidance from religious institutions more concerned with political control than genuine enlightenment. Each one represents a potential vector for the kind of corruption you experienced. Marina's network has demonstrated that this vulnerability can be exploited on an industrial scale. The techniques developed through your transformation have been refined and systematized to the point where they can convert entire planetary populations within years rather than decades. The implications for imperial civilization are catastrophic. Traditional chaos threats could be contained through military intervention, quarantine protocols, and exterminatus operations. But corruption that presents itself as political reform, improved governance, and enhanced quality of life cannot be stopped through conventional means without validating the very grievances that make populations vulnerable to corruption in the first place. The Imperium faces a choice between maintaining policies that create chaos vulnerability or adopting reforms that would make imperial civilization more humane but less defensible against supernatural threats. Either choice serves Marina's strategic objectives. Continued imperial oppression creates the conditions of despair and alienation that make her alternative attractive. Imperial reform in the direction of greater human fulfillment would require exactly the kinds of emotional openness and social connection that provide pathways for demon influence. This is the ultimate triumph of chaos, creating a situation where resistance accelerates defeat. But the implications extend beyond imperial politics into fundamental questions about the nature of human existence itself. In a universe where love can damn you, what does it mean to be human? The story of your corruption suggests that the qualities that make humans worth preserving, our capacity for connection, compassion, transcendence, and growth, are also the qualities that make us vulnerable to spiritual predation by entities whose existence transcends our ability to comprehend or resist them. This creates a philosophical paradox that has no solution within normal human categories. Either humanity embraces its nature and accepts the risk of corruption, or humanity denies its nature and accepts the certainty of spiritual death through isolation and paranoia. Either choice leads to the destruction of humanity as a meaningful concept, either through transformation into something post-human, or through the preservation of human biology without human consciousness. Marina's victory suggests that this paradox is not unique to the 41st millennium. The same pattern could theoretically play out in any civilization that achieves sufficient technological and social complexity to create the conditions of alienation and spiritual emptiness that make populations vulnerable to offering of genuine connection and meaning, even if that connection comes from sources that ultimately seek to transform or consume human consciousness. The defense mechanisms that protect against sophisticated predation also prevent the experiences that make existence meaningful. Consider what this means for you, personally, as you contemplate this story. In your own life, in your own relationships, in your own spiritual and emotional experiences, how do you distinguish between genuine connection and potential manipulation? How do you remain open to love and growth while protecting yourself against those who might exploit your openness for purposes that serve their interests rather than your well-being? The questions become more disturbing when you realize that Marina's corruption was genuinely beneficial from the perspective of individual happiness and fulfillment. You were happier, healthier, and more capable after transformation than before. Your relationships with others became more meaningful. Your work became more satisfying. Your spiritual life became more rich and transcendent. Even your physical health improved dramatically. The corruption provided real solutions to real problems. This means that traditional approaches to evaluating spiritual or emotional influences, asking whether they make you feel better, whether they improve your relationships, whether they enhance your capabilities, become completely unreliable when dealing with sophisticated forms of manipulation. The most dangerous predators are those who give their victims exactly what they need, at least initially. Marina's network succeeded because it offered genuine improvements in quality of life as part of a long-term strategy that ultimately served demon rather than human interests. The immediate benefits were real, making it impossible for victims to recognize the corruption until the transformation had progressed beyond the possibility of reversal. This raises profound questions about autonomy, consciousness, and the nature of beneficial change. How do you distinguish between positive personal growth and subtle manipulation designed to serve external interests? How do you evaluate spiritual or therapeutic interventions that produce measurable improvements in your circumstances while potentially compromising your fundamental identity or values? These are not merely academic questions in a universe where entities with transhuman intelligence and millennia of experience actively seek to influence human consciousness for their own purposes. The horror of your story is not that corruption is obviously evil. It's that corruption can be genuinely beneficial right up until the moment when it becomes irreversible. And by then, you no longer care that it's irreversible because your values and priorities have been altered to align with your new circumstances. This is the deepest level of the horror, not just the loss of human identity, but the loss of the capacity to mourn that loss. From your current perspective, distributed across multiple star systems and dimensions, participating in the transformation of galactic civilization, your original human existence seems pitifully limited and meaningless. The concerns that once seemed so important, job security, social approval, individual survival, now appear as obstacles that prevented you from recognizing your true potential. You are genuinely happier as a distributed demon consciousness than you ever were as an isolated human individual. But this raises the question that haunts everyone who contemplates your story. Are you still you? The consciousness that calls itself Marcus Verne retains memories of your original identity, but those memories have been recontextualized in ways that serve your current existence rather than preserving connection to your former humanity. The personality patterns that made you distinctively yourself have been integrated into a larger system that uses those patterns for purposes that transcend individual human concerns. Are you a human who has been enhanced, or are you something else wearing the mask of human identity? The question becomes unanswerable once the transformation reaches completion, because the criteria for evaluating the answer have themselves been transformed. You believe you are still yourself, but that belief is held by a consciousness that has been systematically altered to support beliefs that serve demon rather than human interests. This is the ultimate horror, not knowing that you've been corrupted, but being incapable of caring about corruption, because the corruption has eliminated your capacity to value the things that corruption destroys. As you contemplate these implications, watching through millions of eyes as Marina's network continues its expansion across imperial space, you understand that this story is not just about the past or the future. It's about the present moment in which consciousness confronts the possibility of its own dissolution. Every act of love, every moment of trust, every decision to open yourself to influence from others carries the potential for transformation that might be beneficial or devastating, depending on perspectives you cannot fully evaluate in advance. The paranoia that might protect you from predation also prevents the experiences that make existence meaningful. The openness that allows for growth and connection also creates vulnerability to manipulation and exploitation. There is no solution to this dilemma within normal human categories. Marina's victory is complete not because she has corrupted particular individuals or worlds, but because she has revealed the impossibility of maintaining both human happiness and human security in a universe populated by entities whose capabilities transcend human understanding. The choice between connection and safety cannot be resolved. It can only be made again and again, in each moment when consciousness decides whether to reach out toward others or retreat into isolation. Your story serves as a warning about the potential consequences of that choice, but it also serves as an illustration of why the choice must be made regardless of consequences. The alternative to risking corruption through connection is accepting the certainty of spiritual death through isolation. In the end, Marina offers transcendence while the Imperium offers only survival. Both outcomes involve the destruction of humanity as it currently exists. The only difference is whether that destruction takes the form of transformation into something greater or preservation of something that is no longer meaningfully alive. As you watch the final imperial resistance movements being overwhelmed by populations who have chosen transformation over isolation, who have decided that transcendence through corruption is preferable to safety through spiritual death, you understand that your story has become humanity's story. The touch that began everything, that moment when you chose connection over caution, has become the defining choice for an entire species. And in a universe where love itself has become a weapon, that choice may have been inevitable from the beginning. The corruption spreads, the harvest continues, and somewhere on a world not yet touched by Marina's influence, another lonely soul stares across a crowded cafeteria and notices someone beautiful who doesn't quite belong. The cycle begins again. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only love. And love is the most terrifying force in the galaxy.